Today, we are exploring 12 places in Tennessee that hide dangers and stories so strange they force you to think twice before you go. Number 1, the old Riverton Orphanage, often called the House on Hollow Hill, a red brick building set back from the river with boarded windows and a bell tower that no longer rings. The orphanage was built in 1891 and survived an epidemic and a fire that left records full of names and abrupt stops. Visitors speak of cold pockets that arrive without warning, of footsteps on stairs long sealed, and of a lullaby that carries down the corridors like a thread from another time. The smell of stale milk and dust lingers in the air. The paint flakes like skin. The wooden banister hums when touched, and lights strobe faintly at dusk. Some people claim to have seen a small figure in a faded dress near the east wing. "I remember feeling watched," says Sarah, who first came as a reporter. "I heard a tune and turned and there was no one." Tom asks. "No," Ruth says. "I froze, then I left." "What did it feel like?" Javier asks, peering through his lens. "Like an apology," Ruth whispers. Marcus adds, "My grandmother buried 3 of them here in the yard. She said they never stopped calling her name." "Do you think they want something?" Sarah asks. "Maybe to be remembered," Lena says. "Or maybe they are just echoes," Tom counters. "Echoes that push," Sarah murmurs, and her voice hangs with the smell of old wood and the metallic hint of long-dried blood. The scene fills with the scrape of shoes on creaky floorboards, a flutter like wings behind a curtain, the distant drip of water, the pale light through dust motes, and a taste of copper in the mouth when the bell tower wind passes. The conversation continues in small exchanges until the night guard, Officer Hayes, knocks on the door reminding them that the place is scheduled for inspection. "We recorded something on the recorder," Javier says, and his playback reveals a childlike hum layered under wind. "I did not put that there," Marcus says. "Neither did I," Ruth replies. And the recorder clicks like a heartbeat. Number 2, the abandoned Waverly Theater, once known as the Midnight Playhouse, stands where oak trees crowd the sidewalk and vines have claimed the marquee. It hosted vaudeville acts, silent films, and a mid-century revival that ended with a stage collapse and one fatality. Locals speak of phantom applause that rises on nights when no show is scheduled. The air is thick with the scent of popcorn long stale. The velvet of the seats sheds like old hair. The rafters creak with distant voices, and drafts that run down the aisle feel like someone walking past when you are alone. "We heard clapping in the balcony," says Grace, who runs a vintage shop nearby. "I saw a shadow younger than any of us sit in the front row." Inside, the troop of investigators trade remarks. "The stage is still scarred," Sarah notes, placing her palm on a splintered plank. "You can smell varnish and regret," Tom says. "There is movement in the curtains," Lena observes. "It is like breathing under fabric," Javier adds. "Could sound travel from the alley?" asks Officer Hayes. "No," Grace says. "That noise belongs to this room." The group records footsteps, the soft scrape of a dress, and a harmonica note that repeats like a memory. The theater holds the taste of mint from old candy, the prick of dust in the throat, and the cold pressure behind the eyes when the lights die unexpectedly. Number 3, the Hollow Road Tunnel, a short stretch of arched stone under the county line, nicknamed the Devil's Passage by teenagers and truckers. A series of car accidents in the 1930s left a record of bodies and a lingering superstition. When you walk through, the stone drinks sound and spits it back as a wrong echo. You feel a chill at the nape of your neck, hear tires that never were, and sometimes perceive a figure that stands in the center of the arch, then fades like smoke. Sarah speaks with Pastor Miller, who once conducted a roadside prayer vigil there. "I felt a heavy sorrow," he says. "It is a place of compressed time." "Did you ever see an apparition?" Sarah asks. "I saw a shape," he admits, "and the air around it smelled like old winter." The scene is full of metallic tang from brake dust, the twang of a loose wire that sounds like a string snapped, the taste of river fog on the tongue, and the sensation of being measured by an unseen pair of hands. "Keep your voice low," Tom whispers, and the echo answers with syllables that are not any language they know. Number 4, the Blackwater Hotel. An ornate Victorian, once the pride of a river town, carries the epithet Mother of Rooms for its maze of suites and private parlors. Its repairs never quite match the original craftsmanship, and each renovation seems to expose a new secret. A prominent gambler died there at the turn of the century, and staff have for decades reported keys that turn on locks not assigned to them, portraits whose eyes follow guests, and elevator stops at floors that no longer exist. The wallpaper peels in the same pattern where a hand was once laid, says Kathy, who works at the front desk. Phones ring in empty corridors. The hotel room smells faintly of coffee, old perfume, stale smoke, and a sweetness like someone has been putting out candles. The group stands in room 217 where windows frame the river. "Do you feel the pressure?" Sarah asks. "It is like someone counting down," Marcus says. "The bed dips when no one sits," Kathy adds. "I closed the door and heard laughter on the landing," Ruth says. "I once found a cigar burned into the carpet and no one claimed it," Tom remarks. "We recorded a voice on the intercom say, 'My name,'" Kathy says, then pauses. "My name?" Sarah repeats, and that simple echo leaves them with the undeniable sense that the hotel remembers guests long after they are gone. Now, number 2, before moving on, pause and tell us in the comments which of these first 4 stories moved you most, or if you have your own memory to add. If you have experienced something similar, start your comment with "I saw" or "I felt," followed by the approximate place and a short line about what happened. Your words help build a map of these encounters and may guide future visits. Many of you follow for the investigation and others for the history, and both perspectives matter here. Sharing details like the time of day, whether you were alone, and how long the sensation lasted makes your testimony more useful to others. We read everything and sometimes follow up with people whose accounts suggest patterns. If you want us to investigate a place you name, tell us and we may come. Thank you for contributing. Now we continue with number 5. Number 5, the Tanglewood Asylum ruins, called the Whispering Wards by urban explorers, sit behind a chain-link fence that locals grind at with stories and knives. It opened in 1906 as a progressive facility, but after understaffing, a disease outbreak, and a rash of forced discharges, it closed mid-century. The backstory of the asylum is a layered human thing. As a child, Sarah remembers a photo in a family album showing her aunt standing on the asylum steps in a dowdy dress, hair cropped by necessity during wartime. That aunt later never spoke of the place again and moved west. In the records, the asylum appears as neat columns and sudden absences. Nurses like Eleanor kept journals that stop on a line and never continue. Patients had names like Samuel, Agnes, and Little Billy, and were often admitted for reasons later recorded as stress or melancholy. The wards smelled of disinfectant and boiled starch even in summer, and the dining hall clanged of utensils once marked mealtimes that were both ritual and survival. Today, the asylum offers cracked tiles, the tang of chemical cleaners gone soft, the thud of falling shutters, and at night a chorus of murmurs that sound like counting. In interviews, Dr. Bennett, a retired archivist, explains that the records show questionable classifications and sudden transfers in the late 1940s. It was a place where procedure made people into numbers, Dr. Bennett says, and numbers are easy to forget. The scene in the long rec rooms includes exchanges between Sarah and a descendant of a patient named Elijah who reads a faded letter. He wrote that he could not hold the sky, Elijah says. He begged for a window. Did he ever get one? Sarah asks. No, Elijah replies. The windows were barred. The dialogue continues, each exchange folding memory into present grief as the air tastes faintly of lemon used in old cleaning. The floor gives like memory, and the distant clatter of a shutter like fingers on bone. Number 6, the Coldwater Bridge, which locals call the Hollow Bridge, spans a narrow part of the river and has a plaque commemorating an unsolved sinking from the 1920s.
Fishermen tell of lights under the water that move like lanterns and of ropes that tighten around boats. The bridge creaks with a ropey groan. Moss smells wet and green. The wind whistles under the railings, and an old bell hung for good luck now gives no comfort. One backstory here is that of Pastor Miller, who as a young man rescued a child from a capsized skiff near the bridge and later returned to find the child had vanished from hospital records. That incident lodged in him and shaped his life. He later became a chaplain who refused to pass the river at night. "I still wake to the sound of a bell I never rang," Miller says. The scene at the bridge includes a late twilight dialogue between Sarah and a river guide named Elijah and a retired diver called Hannah. "The water holds weight," Hannah says. "You can feel it press on your chest even on shore." "Have you dived there?" Sarah asks. "Once," Hannah replies. "I surfaced and tasted salt where none should be." The conversations are quick and layered, 5 to 6 sensory strikes in each moment, and they leave a sediment of unease. Number 7, the old Kingsley Plantation Manor, now a museum, sits on a hill with grave markers dotting the slope. Locals call it the Garden of Murmurs because there are stories of a woman who tends flowers at midnight and of tools found neatly placed under moonlight. Guides like Ruth and Pastor Miller have recounted figures appearing near the azaleas, and an archivist named Dr. Bennett discovered letters that link a plantation overseer to acts that explain the persistent sorrow. The air here is thick with moist earth, the tang of iron from old tools, the muffled hiss of cicadas in summer, the sweet rot of flower heads, and the uneven echo of footsteps over flagstone. Visitors report a pressure that sits on the chest and a voice that feels like a breeze pressing a name into the ear. "I thought it was wind until it called my grandmother," Ruth says. "Then I turned and there was only dew." Number 8, the Founders Hospital Annex, a wing space that was converted into low-cost housing during the 1970s and then sealed after a series of accidents. Its backstory is told in 2 parts. First, the building as hospital ward. Nurses like Eleanor logged patients arriving with odd complaints and then records that stopped mid-sentence. Then the conversion into housing created a different crowd, families like the Parkers who moved in during a cold winter. A resident named Kathy remembers children playing in the corridor until one of them ran into a room and refused to leave. That child later described a woman singing to him through the wall. The backstory layers include documents showing rushed transfers in 1978 and a council memo that warned about structural instability. In both eras, the location collected small tragedies and the whispers that follow them. Inside now, there is the metallic chill of IV stands left standing like lonely trees, the smell of rubber and tea, the creak of a loose tile that sounds like a fist knocking, and a warmth that flickers in a corner without a source. Local nurse Marcus once found a note tucked beneath a mattress that read, "Be kind to the sleeping ones," and the handwriting matched no known patient. "It felt like someone reminding me," he said. Number 9, the Millers Hollow Schoolhouse, a one-room building with chalk dust in the air and a slate board scored by tiny hands, is notorious for abrupt changes in mood among visitors. Teenagers dare each other to ring the bell at midnight and report a figure who stands at the teacher's desk and turns pages of an invisible book. This place is where the first moment of tension tightens. The scene compresses internal conflict and the decision to stay or to run. It plays out in 2 short paragraphs that show the collapse of certainty. Sarah stands in front of the desk and can feel the grain of wood like living skin. Her breath comes out in short clouds, her throat dry, her palms slick, and the classroom lights flicker in a rhythm that matches the memory of a train. "If we stay, we might record something," Javier says. "If we leave, we avoid harm," Tom replies. "Are you afraid?" Sarah asks. "Yes," Tom admits. "Then stay with me," Sarah says. The tension builds as footsteps run across the back of the room, though no one stands. A book falls from the shelf and slaps the floor like a dropped hand. The air smells of chalk and boiled cabbage, the floor is cold underfoot, and a distant voice like a teacher calling roll answers with,
The decision is too thin. The decision is taken at once. They record 10 minutes and leave with a line of cold at their backs that lasts into the next day. Number 10, the Greystone Cemetery Gate, with iron bars open to a maze of headstones and a fog that collects like breath, forces a different kind of moral weighing. It holds the second moment of tension. 2 paragraphs show the choice between confrontation and reverence and the memory that resurfaces like a wound. Sarah, accompanied by Pastor Miller and a local named Elijah, tries to read an epitaph when a hand seems to touch the page. The hand is gone, but the heat remains. "Do you think the living should disturb the dead?" Pastor Miller asks. "We are here to remember," Elijah says. "There is a difference between remembrance and provocation," Sarah counters. The gravestones give off the smell of damp stone and rosemary left by visitors. The crunch of gravel underfoot is loud in the hush, and at one turn a willow tree rustles though there is no breeze. They step back. The tension is both spiritual and bodily, a pressure that kneads at the ribs and makes breathing difficult. After a while, they light a candle, and the flame bends toward a particular marker, as if drawn by a name. Number 11, the Holloway factory floor, quiet since its closure in the 1980s, still retains the sound memory of machines. Workers who once kept shifts here left tools arranged on benches that never moved but are sometimes found out of place. A former foreman named Elijah and a union organizer named Grace tell of a time the machinery seemed to run without power at dawn. The smell of oil and metal is constant. A thin film of dust collects in the grooves of conveyor belts, and sometimes a single shoe lies where no one worked. Security cameras recorded a shadow passing through a locked room and then a chair rocking. The place is currently private property, but rumor says a developer may convert it into lofts. Notices of restoration hang, then are torn. The uncertainty of its future echoes the uncertainty of the presences inside. Number 12, the Easton Quarry, a deep cut in the earth where stone was pulled for a century, is a landscape that refuses to be read as merely geology. Divers speak of currents that run where none were charted, and hikers report a voice that calls their name from the quarry floor. The crushed stone underfoot is like the sound of small bones. The wind whistles up the cliffside. The water smells of mineral iron, and the sky seems closer and therefore more accusing. A climber named Hannah describes seeing a form in the reflection of the water, then turning to only a ripple. The quarry is now partially closed, with signage warning of unstable ledges, but it remains a place people seek out for the way it makes them feel both small and intensely observed. As we close the list, consider that many of these places are publicly accessible, and some are restricted or private. We mention names like Sarah the investigator, Marcus the caretaker, Lena the historian, Tom the skeptic, Ruth the social worker, Javier the photographer, Officer Hayes the night guard, Pastor Miller the chaplain, Dr. Bennett the archivist, Kathy the hotel clerk, Grace the organizer, Elijah the descendant, and Hannah the diver. Each of them has a stake in what these sites mean to their towns. Now the epilogue in 3 parts. 1 month later, the echo of our visit still resonates in the communities we touched. Sarah receives messages from people who say they were moved to clean a neglected grave or to leave flowers at a windowsill. Marcus reports that a council meeting that once shrank from saving the Riverton Orphanage now agreed to a structural survey after residents signed a petition. The Waverly Theater's caretaker, Grace, found an old program tucked under a seat and posted it online, and the post drew a dozen former patrons who recalled a specific Saturday when the playhouse was full. People who had felt shame about saying they heard something now write with details and dates, and a local reporter named Tom filed an op-ed calling for preservation and caution in equal measure. The sense that memory can be reclaimed by small acts becomes tangible as volunteers in 3 towns begin to catalog artifacts and to form plans for archives.
The conversations we recorded are discussed at a historical society meeting, and an archivist like Dr. Bennett reads fragments that help families reconnect with lost names. At public forums, Pastor Miller urges a posture of respect and not spectacle, and his voice persuades some to reconsider nighttime expeditions and to choose guided visits instead. 3 months on, the ripple widens and some official actions take shape. The Hollow Bridge receives safety markers and a plaque acknowledging the unsolved tragedies, and the county commits to better lighting and to signage that discourages risky nocturnal trips. The Blackwater Hotel owners agree to an expert assessment to preserve architectural details and to explore how to keep the memory of past occupants present without exploiting grief. A small grant is awarded to fund partial stabilization of the asylum roof so that records can be safely recovered, and a team led by Dr. Bennett begins cataloging admissions ledgers found in a weathered trunk. Families who had lost touch write to each other after finding names in those ledgers, and a reunion is planned for late spring. Journalism students from a nearby university set up a project to interview older residents like Eleanor's niece and to assemble oral histories that capture the cadence of memory. The Millers Hollow Schoolhouse is placed on a local stewardship list, and a volunteer group begins to clear invasive growth and document inscriptions on the slate boards so that the children who once learned there
are not erased entirely. 6 months later, changes both small and structural appear. The Riverton Orphanage opens for limited daytime tours guided by volunteers who emphasize context, empathy, and safety. The Waverly Theater hosts a restoration fundraiser performance that sells out and brings together survivors and descendants who bring their memories to the stage in a modest ceremony. The Founders Hospital Annex receives attention from a preservation nonprofit, and a plan is drafted to conserve the facade while creating a memorial space that honors patients whose names were neglected. Some local ordinances are proposed to regulate nighttime trespassing at historic sites, balancing public safety with access to heritage. Meanwhile, narratives begin to shift. Where locals once spoke in hushed tones, they now speak in names, in dates, in documented records, and in cautious curiosity. Tests performed at the quarry reveal that currents can produce audible phenomena under particular temperature gradients, which explains some of the reported sounds without eliminating the sense of being observed. A paranormal research group donates equipment to the Historical Society and works alongside archivists rather than replacing them. Importantly, the communities report that sharing these stories has reduced fear for some and increased a desire to protect local history for future generations. New plaques and interpretive signs appear that invite visitors to learn rather than to provoke. And many of the witnesses who once told their experiences in isolation now meet periodically in public spaces to recall, to correct, and to record, turning individual memory into communal responsibility. If you decide to visit any of these places, respect local rules, take a friend, and consider daytime visits that do not disturb others. These sites connect us to human histories that can be tender, ugly, brave, and unfinished. If you enjoyed this journey through memory and mystery, subscribe for more investigations that combine historical research with witness testimony. Share this video with someone who loves strange local history and who might add their own memory to the map. In the end, places like these teach us that a closed door can still hold a question, and that listening may be the first duty we owe to the past.